The audio commentary. It's a dying art form, but here at One Track Mind, I, your wonky yet affable host Ryan Luis Rodriguez, analyze film through the prism of these embryonic forms of podcasting, one audio commentary at a time. Masterpieces, crapster pieces, live action, animation, cult classics, films literally no one has ever heard of. No track is too small, and no track is too big. Join me and my guests from the entertainment world as we keep these features alive every other Tuesday. Hey, who else is going to discuss Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey one week and Citizen Kane the next? Us, that's who. Sure, you have to put up with my voice, but there's a certain give and take in this industry. That's One Track Mind, part of the Someone's Favorite Productions family, and available wherever you get your podcasts.
Back to Film Foundations, a collaborative show between Weirding Way Media and Someone's Favorite Productions. I am your co-host, Chris Dashew from Weirding Way Media and the Culture Cast, and because I'm in this position, I don't get to say anything funny.
And I'm your other co-host, Ryan Verrill from the Disconnected and Someone's Favorite Productions, coming to you straight from the moist cosmic hell that we're going to be discussing tonight.
I like that. I like moist. The use of the word moist is apropos here.
You just alienated a big part of the audience that cannot
that was my job.
hear the word.
On this show, we ask and answer 4 questions about a given topic that is surrounding either an actor, director, franchise, or in this episode's case, a microgenre. Our job is to entice you to broaden your horizons of film, to encourage you to travel down tangents and side roads that you may not have traveled down otherwise. On this episode, if you've clicked on it, you know that we're going to be talking about Lovecraft without Lovecraft. What does that mean? Well, our guest, Spencer Parsons, who's all the way from Northwestern University, where he is a professor, associate professor of RTVF, radio, television, and film, for you people who don't know what that abbreviation is, also a filmmaker. But he's also one of the few people who have come to this show with something that is intently specific in a way that, again, not saying Meryl Streep or Steven Spielberg wouldn't be, but this is like you went out of your way to pick a thing. So first off, tell our audience a little bit about kind of what you do, what films you make, and then why, if given the opportunity to pick anything, you decided to do Lovecraft without Lovecraft.
You know, I don't only make horror films, but I mostly make horror adjacent, and I guess a word that's going to come up a bunch tonight, weird, kind of films, shorts and features. And I have recently come off of teaching a class on weird horror specifically, derived from the idea of weird tales and Lovecraft, and kind of trying to think about the aesthetics of the weird in cinema, part of that is. Well, we'll get into a lot that's very film specific. One of the tough nuts to crack about adapting Lovecraft is that the work is so literary in ways that are both good and bad. That one of the reasons why I'm thinking of this as Lovecraft without Lovecraft is I think some of the work that is not directly based on Lovecraft actually comes a lot closer to the mark of achieving the Lovecraftian by not trying to stick to what are the specifics of given stories and the sort of Lovecraftian mythos, if that makes sense.
I mean, it totally does. We were talking before we turned the recorder on about things that were and weren't kind of applicable here. So I would say, before we go any further, in your mind, what are the hard lines here so our audience can kind of see what the paths we're going to be traveling down are, and the ones that maybe, like we talked about before we even started recording, might be, quote, a little too on the nose, unquote.
Right. So like, I love Reanimator. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. But no, we're not going to be talking about Reanimator because it's Lovecraft without Lovecraft. And so not, based on a specific Lovecraft film. I don't know, maybe the topic of Stuart Gordon's Dolls will come up later, and that is a movie that I consider to be fairly Lovecraftian, maybe arguably more Lovecraftian than Stuart Gordon's direct sort of adaptations. So not direct adaptations, and also not direct pastiche or citation. So we're going to talk some John Carpenter, but we're not going to talk about In the Mouth of Madness, because from the title onward, there's a lot that's very specific to Lovecraft that is being adapted. It's kind of, I think of In the Mouth of Madness, even though it doesn't name Lovecraft within the movie, that's a movie that's a little bit like Naked Lunch or something in terms of interpreting William Burroughs. So that becomes a little bit too close. So, I guess the way I'd like to talk about this is to, maybe start with some of the stuff that's like Lovecraft inspired and see how it works. That's not necessarily a direct kind of reference or pastiche. And then go farther and farther off the reservation, to think about how, cinema itself can be actually quite Lovecraftian when it wants to be.
Well, and I mean, as much as I'm not disappointed we don't get to talk about In the Mouth of Madness, because I think it's a movie that has gotten a reappraisal in the last 10, 15 years. And I think similarly to another movie that came out in the 90s, much further ahead of its time than it had any right to be, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's operating in a world that people at the time were not really as in tune with the idea of metafiction and what that would mean to be, and especially with something like In the Mouth of Madness, which it is a, and again, like, because I just rewatched it today, just because, again, like, it's one of those movies that when I think about it, I'm like, I should rewatch it because it's such a good movie. It's meta within meta within meta.
Yeah.
It's like 3 levels of meta on top of everything else. But the entire thing really is essentially they're just not saying Lovecraft. They mention Stephen King in the movie several times, which is the funny part. I always forget that they're like, he outsold Stephen King. I was like, oh, right. They straight up say that in the movie. But the other thing, and I think you kind of already alluded to it, is if Cthulhu is mentioned outright, that is a disqualifier here.
Right.
100%.
And so, for instance, the Evil Dead movies are out because, they've got the Necronomicon.
Right.
I love Evil Dead. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about the way in which,
don't we all, really?
Yeah, maybe we'll talk about the way in which that relates, to the idea of what's Lovecraftian. I mean, I guess I'll mention very quickly. So one thing about Lovecraft is that as a writer, he's, really famously open source. He encouraged and worked with other writers who would sort of elaborate upon ideas and monsters and whatnot that he had created, which is actually, remarkably ahead of its time as a way of working, and so that's the kind of direct tradition that the Evil Dead movies fit into with the Necronomicon.
Evil Dead is very similar to the way Robert Chambers used Lovecraft's material. It's like we're talking about it and we're expounding further, but like this is directly. It's like we're coming at this directly. Like it is
That's
Lovecraft. Because what he talked about, we are now going to talk further about. That is not what we're doing here.
And I'm gonna kick out Jason Goes to Hell while we're talking about it. That also has the Necronomicon borrowed from Evil Dead, but other Friday the 13th may be on the table.
Interesting.
If we go there.
It's true.
So,
one thing we're dancing around here. There's a lot of people that are going to listen to this or watch this that have probably never watched a Lovecraftian movie and don't know what that means. How do you define a Lovecraftian movie, Spencer?
Right. Okay. So here's the big idea of that Lovecraft had that I think is better than him. And I'm about to piss off Lovecraft fans when I say that, like, I love the stories, but on a certain level, H.P. Lovecraft, and I say this with love, is the worst writer to ever be the most influential on, culture and
Totally agree.
Other literature and movies and everything. And it's because he has this central idea that is so big and important, but that even he can't handle. And he has to call it unnameable over and over again. All the eldritch, unnameable, blah, blah,
It's ironic, isn't it? Even he can't handle it, right? Like he couldn't handle what he created.
He can't handle the truth. But so that big idea is, and I'll just bring up a direct quote because I got some direct quotes. He says, "Now all my tales are based on the fundamental premise that common human laws and interests and emotions have no validity or significance in the vast cosmos at large." That's pretty big. That's central. That's like right there at the middle. And this is about cosmic horror. And, we'll be talking about the cosmic quite a bit. But one of the things, another way of putting this that he sets up and that is really important to Lovecraft is a kind of view on the inside from the outside. One of the essential things that Lovecraft stories do is they decenter our normal way of thinking about drama. And, just in saying that, like, all human emotion and endeavor and everything is not what my story is concerned about. Well, yeah, just right there. You've taken away all the Aristotle. You've taken away all the save the cat. Some of that stuff can come into, and I'm not going to say that like all the movies we'll talk about are not applicable to more traditional kinds of dramaturgy, but there's this like really big guiding idea that Lovecraft throws out there that even he can't quite describe. And I think part of what's interesting about cinema is a little bit better at describing this stuff by being literal up to a point and then leaving a lot of, kind of interesting, purposeful ambiguity at the same time. But there's stuff that we can see that conditions our imaginations for the unimaginable, if that makes sense. And so I think in a way, cinema is better from the get-go at taking on these ideas than literature necessarily is. And that's not anything against literature, but it's like, just think about what the camera does. We have a protagonist who's like the main character in a movie. The movie may even be from their point of view, and we see them from the outside at all times. This is typical. Right. This is the main way of seeing it. Unless you see the remake of Maniac from a few years ago, or Lady in the Lake, or there's a very small number of like true all the way through POV movies. And those tend to be kind of weird style exercises and not totally work out. But the way in which movies are filmed from the get-go has a tension between the inside and the outside that I think makes cinema really good for dealing with this idea. So there's this idea of imagining the unimaginable that comes from trying to see ourselves from the outside in a way that recognizes that we are tiny within our universe. Now, again, that doesn't mean that human endeavor isn't ultimately important. Maybe to Lovecraft it wasn't. To most of the filmmakers I'm going to be citing, it really is. So that's a way in which it's not Lovecraft, it's Lovecraftian. But is not necessarily directly based on that. So is that a good enough explanation to start with? Is there more stuff to get into with it?
I mean, so much of it's metatextual. That's the problem. Like,
yes.
Getting to this point, I mean, like you kind of already alluded to, Lovecraft without Lovecraft, you have to understand what that means initially. Yes. And like you alluded to, I mean, I think about it often when it comes to someone like Lovecraft, because I think another way for more contemporary audiences to understand it in terms of an example, and again, I think he's more involved than Lovecraft was in terms of downstream, but I mean, in a lot of ways, it's like what George Lucas did. He created a world and then just it was okay with everybody else doing their own thing within it, which not a lot of people would have been for a lot of reasons, but he was. And then obviously it left his ability to control it and it became its own thing. I mean, it's kind of a cheap analogy because I think what Lovecraft was getting at is obviously a little bit more interesting.
Yeah.
emotionally and at least challenging me as a reader and a writer than what George Lucas has done. But it's the same thing. I mean, they've created something that has essentially escaped velocity, their gravity, and gotten out into the world. And there's nothing better than someone else doing something with your thing and maybe even doing it better. There's nothing wrong with that. I understand why someone would bristle at it, but I mean, to your point, people end up carrying the ball a lot further and a lot harder than Lovecraft ever would have even thought about doing.
Well, and an interesting thing is that versus George Lucas, he had a tiny audience while he was alive and even for many years after he died. We're talking about a niche audience. Lovecraft is kind of the velvet underground of cinema.
Right.
And of a certain kind of horror literature in a way. You know, it's not so much that so many copies were sold, it's that the copies got sold to the right people. And that open source kind of way of developing a mythos that went on, after he died. And, there's argument among the Lovecraft scholars as to how much he meant to be open source. But the fact of the matter is he did end up very open source. And what that did was it spread these ideas, again, I think to people who didn't even know that they were taking them on. And we might talk about a couple that I think end up in the same place as Lovecraft just by drawing on the same influences that he did and living through the 20th century. And maybe they didn't they didn't read him at all. They didn't rate him as important, but that he concretized an idea that then folks later on have run with, whether intentionally or not.
Well, and to be fair, George Lucas knew a lot more about the inherent value of capitalizing your ideas into things. Lovecraft was not necessarily as interested, but that again goes into the idea of how does the idea spread if not through multiple venues and multiple means.
If only he'd been selling stuffed Yog Sothoth
toys. Right, exactly. I mean, hey, Cthulhu's cute now. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah, I think there are Cthulhu stuffed toys.
Oh yeah, there are
absolutely
tons. The comic book stores around the world are replete with them, as one might say.
Yeah, but Lovecraft didn't have that idea originally. Somebody else had to come along and make that stuff.
Well, and again, I mean, in my mind, it goes back to, again, like in terms of like the philosophy behind what we're talking about, like the idea of putting pen to paper and making something tangible. That alone, that like creative process is ultimately, in my mind, what Lovecraft becomes so important about, which is, again, being creative, but not necessarily starting from zero. You might be starting from 1, 2, or 3. And I mean, again, like in so many things in the world, like if something is in your brain, it is just a thought. It is when it is put on paper, it somewhat becomes tangible and reality, and it can be received by people. I mean, I think there's a quote, there is nothing outside the text. And that's, I mean, in reality, there isn't. I mean, human history is only really, outside of the oral tradition, is shared through text. And I mean, again, like that's what's so interesting about Lovecraft is that becomes a part of modern mythology in a way that Tolkien and Lucas and other people would kind of throw their hat into the ring as well. But Lovecraft is a very early expression of creating an idea, putting it to paper, and then just letting it grow on its own.
Yeah, well, and I think for instance, you bring up Tolkien, and so Tolkien obviously hugely influential, and I enjoy Lord of the Rings myself. So this is not to slag on Tolkien, but I think Lovecraft is a bigger deal in the sense that. Tolkien creates more of a map for world creation that unfortunately a lot of the followers of Tolkien follow his kind of world creation. Obviously, there are some who have taken that kind of notion of world creation and created their own worlds.
Right.
But Lovecraft, I think, has an idea that like worms its way into a lot more stuff and is more flexible. And he becomes, again, I already said he's like the worst writer to be so influential, but I think his influence, I don't know, you got to give it about 300 years, but I think it's actually like, quasi Shakespearean,
And it again, it's Ouroboros. It eats its own tail because the idea of what Lovecraft is a cosmic horror that spreads, and how does it spread through the storytelling? Through either oral or written down or whatever. And again, it is ironic because Lovecraft himself is less important than ever, frankly. I mean, again, I'm not to be dismissive, but you kind of already alluded to it. Like, he wasn't a great writer, but if you're introducing broad ideas to people, you don't necessarily have to be the best writer. You just have to be able to get your point across, which he does.
Well, and so philosophers, for instance, are super into Lovecraft now. There's a lot of philosophy built on this, and there should be, because however he does it, he's articulating serious kinds of philosophical ideas and questions through the stories, without necessarily being a philosopher. It's the philosophers that come after it to sort of, take the rats in the walls and expound upon what that represents philosophically.
Which is where I was so excited to do this episode, and I know Ryan was as well, because the influence of Lovecraft in things that aren't necessarily Lovecraft it is broader than it seems, but it is very specific. But it is broad because I think once we kind of get more into the specifics of what movies we're going to be throwing into the ring here, you'll see kind of what we're talking about. But like you said, like, he is so influential in a way that it's really hard to pin down any one thing, because it feels like the ideas and the singular ideas have been taken and run with, the metafictional ideas have been taken and run with, and then both of those things have been put together by people and run with. And it's like, Jesus, how many other derivative, but derivations of this can we run with before it's exhausted? Still haven't seen it yet, really. Like, people are still doing things with these ideas that seem fresh, even though Lovecraft hasn't seen any of these movies because he's been dead for a very long time. So
very long time,
very long time. So let's, before we get into the questions, Spencer, kind of give a broad kind of overview in your mind of what the Lovecraft without Lovecraft movie kind of history, media history of that is, before we kind of just jump into the questions.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So there are some films that were kind of Lovecraft inspired, not long after his life. So you do find some stuff in, particularly in the 1950s, you start to see some stuff come up. You've actually hit me with a question where I'm not as facile with the titles, but, there were Poe-based movies that would get Lovecraft titles put onto them, and of course, Poe was a big influence on Lovecraft.
Right.
And there's a Roger Corman in particular that I'm forgetting. But you get into, like, so is the Lovecraft, the directly Lovecraft-based movies. There's a Dunwich Horror, and there are a number that start to percolate up through the 1950s and 60s. And then in the 70s, I think, is where this really takes off as Lovecraft without Lovecraft. I have a couple of Lovecraft without Lovecraft that are earlier, but it's the 70s where it really takes off, because it's a certain kind of nerd that of the famous Monsters of Filmland readers and the EC Comics readers who are aware of Lovecraft, whether it be Stephen King or Dan O'Bannon,
Rod Serling.
Yeah. Or exactly.
Night Gallery has a couple H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, I know that there's a Pickman's Model, like, straight up adaptation. I mean, I watched it. So
that's right.
And then there are a couple other ones within it. So, like, and that was a big pop culture needle mover, was Rod Serling's stuff. I mean, maybe not Night Gallery as much as Twilight Zone, but I mean, having H.P. Lovecraft in Night Gallery is pretty important. I mean, in terms of
For sure.
showing it to a certain kind of audience at a certain time.
Well, and I would throw out that, like, within Lovecraft Without Lovecraft, Outer Limits has to be considered.
Oh, yeah.
Because the structures of those stories are more Lovecraftian than, like, Twilight Zone. And maybe a little bit more, but not definitely more than Twilight Zone. Maybe a little bit more Lovecraft informed than Night Gallery. But the way that Outer Limits worked was really just like bringing the audience up to the edge of revealing the monster and then getting out of town,
Right.
not kind of bring us around for a full moral. Not that that's necessarily wrong in a story, but just works a little bit differently. Again, Lovecraft is not going to be a Lovecraft Without Lovecraft movie is not going to be dedicated to giving you a clear moral, because that's one of the first things that's got to go in this cosmic horror idea of not caring about, human preferences.
Right. The cosmic horror is bigger than humanity ever could hope to be.
And bigger than a moral at the end of the story that you can easily sort of comprehend and teach a child a lesson with.
Older and bigger, which is why the thing for Lovecraft, period, and I mean even Lovecraft Without Lovecraft has this. The idea of being informed of whatever it is causes you to go mad because you can't comprehend it. But that does show. I mean, I'm assuming that's probably going to show up in some of the things we pick, anyways. Yep. I mean, maybe not as much as it does in the things that are directly referencing it. But that's always part of it, is the inability to comprehend whatever it is, which again is now looking at that as a contemporary analysis, like that's so metafictional. Like I can't comprehend it because it is expanded beyond the reaches of my ability to look at all of it. Like that's just another way of putting it. Really, like Lovecraft was just getting at it in terms of more of a applicable to horror as a genre, which is being driven mad by something. But take the genre of it out and you have something that's a lot different now that I think is being played with in a way that can be Lovecraftian without Lovecraft.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm very excited about this episode. This is one that feels like it's written for me. And Spencer, we may have to talk after we're done recording, because
absolutely,
you brought up the genre of the weird, and I'm gonna bring that up in something I'm gonna talk about to the answer of question 2. So
fantastic.
Maybe we should just get into those questions there, Chris.
Let's do it.
Go for it, Ryan. You kick us off, Ryan.
All right, Spencer. Question number 1, as usual. What is, in your opinion, the foundational title for Lovecraft Without Lovecraft, that if somebody's never seen any of these, this is the first one that they should watch?
I'm going to say Alien, and we know that it's directly influenced. But in fact, like not Alien, I've got to talk about it as actually the Alien series, because Alien kicks it off. But I'm going to have some hot takes about later Alien movies in the franchise.
It ain't as hot as you would think, man. We did an Alien episode, and I may have already pissed the Alien fans off. So.
Maybe. So Alien does really kick it off. It's this, Dan O'Bannon and Ron Suchet. They have this basic idea that is a kind of haunted house thing. But because it's in the cosmos, it starts to speak to cosmic horror from the moment that they step off of, the ship, and they got to go to the, that big wonderful kind of that. I'm forgetting what everybody has the name for it. That big crazy like.
The wishbone thing.
The wishbone, yeah, like half-eaten donut ship that the space jockey is inside.
Oh, and thank you for using that term, by the way, because we don't use that term no more after Prometheus, don't you know?
Well, we're going to talk about Prometheus in just a second too, which Prometheus might not quite fit here. We'll talk about it a little bit, but might not quite fit because it is a little more directly pastiched from At the Mountains of Madness than Alien is from any particular. But the moment that we have a room full of eggs and a space jockey and like a weird laser kind of protective level above those eggs, with the fog, we're into a realm of implications that are much larger than the people who have walked in. The mystery of the space jockey, which, it's funny. Ridley Scott talked about that long ago in the extras about Alien, from the DVD era in the 90s. His interviews, he's already on about, wanting to do Prometheus. And it's kind of like, dude, don't do it. Because the beautiful mystery of this thing, of it encountering this thing that's maybe a skeleton, but also looks kind of like a spacesuit, and it's got a hole in its chest, and the way that all this is going to come together, and where did it come from, and what is the purpose of all this stuff? It is speaking to something bigger. And then what happens, among the crew is not merely, oh, there's now a bug on our ship, but it's a kind of thing that brings out different responses from everybody, but that as a social group begins to drive them mad. And that they're on a mission that is, so this is one area where the original Alien is so much better than Prometheus. And I know people have said this before, but this is another thing that's great about Lovecraft without Lovecraft. These folks are truckers. They're space truckers, as O'Bannon always talked about it and everything. So they're space truckers. They're not scientists. They're not on a big mission, but they find their way into a big mission that is beyond their comprehension. In Prometheus, you send in a bunch of scientists and they act so much dumber than the truckers. The space truckers in Alien are so much smarter. They're so much more scientific than the scientists in Prometheus.
Or an Alien Covenant, for that matter, because then they go full dum-dum. As much as I enjoy that movie, don't take your helmet off on a alien planet. Are you? It's breathable air. What's your fucking point?
Yeah, exactly. Keep yourself safe. What are you thinking? Yeah, no, it's so at any rate, we have this setup at the end, and then at the end, it's interesting. The cosmic force, in a way, is defeated, but it's also not. She's left alone in hypersleep at the end, and there's this ambiguity about what could possibly happen to her, and she's sort of left alone, and she leaves that little message at the end, signing off that she's going to go to sleep. And then we get Aliens and Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection, all of which continue this story to become more and more Lovecraftian as they go. She's going further into madness. She is confronted with more of an unknown with each successive chapter. And James Cameron does his level best to close this out in a Reagan-era happy ending. And it's great, and I love it. But they still have to go to sleep. And that's the thing. Going to sleep allows, the aliens back in. And it reminds me of the sleep pattern in the Alien movies. And the way that this works, it reminds me of Lovecraft's night gaunts. This thing that from as a child, he was visited in dreams by these very difficult to describe kind of spirits.
Sleep paralysis, probably, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now the modern interpretation.
No, totally. And I think, and he knew that it was psychological. He was a very materialist. That's one of the interesting things as well. He's a very materialist character, and the materialism is where his weirdness comes from. So atheist, and himself did not believe in the kind of like elder gods and everything. His elder gods, like the monster and Alien, are metaphors. They're allegory for other kinds of things. But so here's the thing. I really don't like Alien Resurrection, but my hat's fucking off to that movie for producing a couple of things that are just incredible as like Lovecraftian horror. So my hot take on Alien Resurrection is that the whole movie should not actually have aliens in it anymore. They've exhausted the xenomorph. Don't bring in the aliens. It is enough to bring this woman back from death in multiple clones, and she confronts her own like horrifying her own horrifying, like different manifestations of badly cloned selves. This is so grotesque. This is actually like really over the line.
Oh, are you talking about the scene in general, or just the idea? Yeah, it's
no, the scene and the idea. It's so disgusting, and I mean, like the effects in it are really grotesque. And they're, you know, even by being like more fake and less convincing, they're still like grotesque in this way that's like really, really messed up. And then she's got to fuck the alien at the end. So, I mean, this is what brings us into like true madness territory by the end of that movie is she's got to fuck the alien. She's going to birth an alien. No, this movie's not as good as Possession, which is definitely a Lovecraft without Lovecraft movie. But in Alien Resurrection, we're kind of starting to get into Possession territory in terms of like the relationship to this monster. But Alien 3 also deserves a lot of credit for sort of taking the Lovecraftian ball farther into like, you know, into real madness. That's one where, you know, if you want to, I don't necessarily like, I like fan theories better when they're like fan readings.
Right.
You call it a reading because you know that that's not necessarily what's intended, but there's enough in it to give you something to work with. And there's a reading that I like of Alien 3 where there is no alien on board. It's a figment of her kind of imagination, a figment of the imaginations of all the people that she's around, because it's so, you know, the whole film is like embedded. I'm not saying this is literal. Again, I just want to be clear. I am not doing a fan theory. I am doing a reading where this sort of enriches the sort of psychology of the character of Ripley as she's going through all these films. That the alien is almost this like yellow wallpaper figure or ghost or like the rats in the walls, this thing that may or may not be real that is driving everybody mad on a total death drive to where she has to kill herself by the end. She's in such pain because of the confrontation with the cosmic horror that she has to die. And so that's one of the things that I really love. And the least, you know, by continuing, Aliens is a bit Lovecraftian, but it's the least Lovecraftian of all of the Alien movies. But it's implicated. Lovecraft is in there. Jim Cameron just is not like that. He's not down for like the totally open. James Cameron is going to go in. He's going to solve a problem. You know, we're sending in the Marines. They're going to kill the bugs. We're going to solve a problem. And you know what? It's one of my all-time favorite movies. So this is not a complaint. It's just a kind of an ethos. And I guess like one of the things I'd like to throw out that I love about the Lovecraftian is that it defeats our traditional sort of movies are built around a fantasy of mastery. And Aliens is the most dedicated to a fantasy of mastery where we figure out what the problem is and we're going to go in and we're going to solve it. And so, of course, James Cameron was pissed off when Alien 3 begins by killing off a couple of characters that he thought he had saved. You know, there's the fantasy of mastery that they can get back home, that they can solve the problem, they can kill off the alien queen, and they're going to get there. And James Cameron believes in that to the very end. Because the series continues, that it becomes more Lovecraftian from there. We actually did solve the problem, and then we didn't. It's unsolvable. Ripley is driven to madness. So that would be my starting point. I think that's the best Lovecraft without Lovecraft to start with. And I include all the movies. I mean, I don't even really one trouble of having a reading of Alien Resurrection like I have is that movie's not fun to watch. I don't really have a lot of fun watching it. I'm a big fan of the whole series, so I've seen it now a number of times. But it's worth watching, and this is if you really want to go there, it's worth watching for the way that it synthesizes these ideas in a truly horrific fashion that I kind of hope will influence other filmmakers to make something better, you know, out of these ideas. So I think it's actually to me it's become a tremendously important film while being one that I don't really want to watch again soon. But you know, I might teach it in a class someday as like a problem film.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think that movies that don't necessarily succeed all the way end up being end up being more interesting in the long run, because movies that succeed often they've laid their groundwork out for you to see, and
Yes.
movies that necessarily aren't successes, they may not be as much of a success because they are a little bit more ambiguous with the audience, which Western audiences, read as American ones, don't seem to. It's not that they don't value, it's just not something that feels like it's been part of the storytelling tradition here as much as it has been other places, which is unfortunate. I mean, like you said, with Aliens, as much as I like Aliens, I find the ending of Aliens to be a little pedantic. I'm like, and we're just here again. Like, it's, I mean, I get it from a sitcom point of view. Like, we're right back where we started. But again, to your point, like, when we kind of transcend that first two films and go further, they start playing around with some interesting ideas. Maybe they don't all work, but they're doing something interesting with them. And hey, I would have liked to have seen that goddamn wood planet in the third one. Just saying.
I know.
Just saying.
I know. Vincent Ward and the Wood Planet. I love it. Well, one other thing about Cameron is Aliens comes in a cycle of Vietnam War movies. And there's a way in which Aliens is a fantasy of winning the Vietnam War, which might be the most Lovecraftian war that America has ever been involved in. A deeply Lovecraftian war that is madness, that lasts in our culture to this very moment. It is a madness that has not yet died out.
I have a very close family friend who is in his 80s now, and he was stationed in Vietnam, but he didn't participate in like the infantry or anything, but he was special ops or some sort of like something that had to do with antennas and radio communication. So he was somewhat top secret. He remembers interacting with people in Vietnam, soldiers who had, and again, this is, maybe it's hyperbolic, maybe it's being embellished, soldiers who would come back after the evening with ears around their necks on a string because they would go and they would kill Viet Cong and cut their ears off. And it's like, I know they weren't doing this in World War II, you fucking psychos. I mean, and that's the thing. It's because they've been driven to madness by an enemy they cannot see. I mean, that's the thing, right? Vietnam was about an enemy you can't see. You don't know where they're coming from. They're in the walls, man. I mean, that scene in Aliens, right? I see him on the thing. Where are they? And then they pop the ceiling up, and it's just like, oh fuck. But that's Vietnam, right? Like that happened for real. I mean, people walking into punji traps. The fucking Vietnamese are underground in their tunnels. Like, you can't see them. You know they're there, but you can't see them.
Well, and if I'm going to be an idiot sociologist, which I'll just go ahead and be, even though I don't have the training, I'll go back. This is a pretty common theory about 70s horror, but the Vietnam War unleashes. This is why the 70s and why I think Alien, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is also a Lovecraftian kind of movie, and very influenced by the Vietnam War. So it is a Lovecraftian force that unleashes a lot of energy, even though, the Lovecraftian stuff was lying in wait and did exist beforehand.
Ryan, what do you think about Alien? You like the movie Alien? Do you like Alien?
Of course I do. Yeah, I think this is a great choice. Very, very like timeless mainstream type of choice. That one, this is the one that I would consider most people have probably watched at this point.
And it has the tentacles, which others coming up are not going to have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they just re-showed it in theaters a couple weeks ago for its 45th anniversary, which is, shocking.
But I don't want to think about that. Please, let's not.
Well, I'm just thinking 45 years later, they're making another Alien movie that comes out in like a month and a half. So
yeah. Can't shake it.
No, can't shake it. Ryan, do you want me to answer next, or do you want to answer?
Go right ahead, sir. I'd love to hear what you got.
Okay. So my answer, I think mainstream as well, probably. It's a movie that, again, I have a deep affection for, so this might be a little bit of a bias, but I think in terms of hitting the notes, but not in a way that it's like, oh, that's that. It's like, you're there, I can see your influence, but I'm not necessarily seeing the tentacles and all that. So maybe it's too on the nose. I mean, again, if Alien is too on the nose, this might also be too on the nose, but Alex Garland's Annihilation.
Oh, yeah.
I would put up there as a eminently approachable movie. I think if you sat down and watched it, will you get everything from it the first time? maybe not. I think it's a little less straightforward than Alien in terms of the conversation it's trying to have with the audience, but I think it's mainstream enough to still be worthwhile in the this is a foundational title, because I think like Alien, it's kind of having a conversation with the audience that once you pick up on it and see what it's trying to say, it makes a little bit more sense. I just think Alex Garland as a screenwriter tends to traffic in ambiguity a little bit more than Dan O'Bannon and Ron Shusett did, which, again, Dan O'Bannon is one of the few writers that I have like an immense amount of respect for, because he was cantankerous to the end, baby.
Yes.
And I appreciate that. I mean, as someone who maybe isn't as cantankerous, but is, again, I consider myself to be the kind of person who does not like to bend when other people steal my script, David Geiler.
Yeah.
God. But Annihilation is a movie that I've seen plenty. I enjoy it immensely. It is, in terms of the source material, it's not even really based off of the book that it's based on,
It's
which
just
I think...
The memory of reading the book.
Right, literally. It's like, this is what I remembered about the book. And it's like, okay, Alex Garland, perfect. And that's the thing. I mean, in a lot of ways, you know, his film Civil War just came out, and there's a universe where that movie is mentioned here as an answer, because the ideas there could have been transmuted into covering something like this changes a person irrevocably into something that they were not beforehand. And Civil War touches on it, just like it sniffs it just barely. And I think I know why. It's because Alex Garland already had this conversation in Annihilation. And I think he's also kind of had that conversation in Men and in Ex Machina. But Annihilation, I think, is where he's having the most interesting conversation about the transformative nature of things. And Natalie Portman goes into the force field, or I guess, I forget what it's called exactly in the movie, but it's literally just like a wall that you travel into, and you can't tell that things are different necessarily, but they are, and it drives everybody mad. If that's not Lovecraftian, without necessarily saying Cthulhu or something else or tentacles, I think it's batting in the right ballpark, as it were. And again, to your point about Alien, I think it's very approachable for mainstream audiences, which when we're talking about these kinds of ideas, we probably need to make sure it's as ground level, maybe first or second story, but not going any further up, because then we're really kind of into a place that people are going to start being uncomfortable with the ambiguity of the stories being told. And look, Alien, like you said, very straightforward at the end. Like, she's asleep, she's drifting out into space, hopefully they find her. Annihilation, the way that movie ends. Yeah, right. Like, the interpretation of that movie, my interpretation and other people's interpretations don't necessarily all resonate with one another, but they're all kind of the same conversation, which I think is, for me, more interesting in the long term for something like Annihilation that has a little bit of ambiguity, but not so much that mainstream audiences are like, ugh. Like, I saw Zodiac and I didn't like the way it ended. I mean, Zodiac, I think, is probably a mentionable thing here, if not, frankly, another answer. Because that's literally the point of the movie.
Yes.
Is these guys are being driven mad by the Zodiac killer, who is seemingly played by different actors throughout the movie, because he is. Sometimes we don't even know if he actually is the killer or not when Charles Fleischer's on screen. Right. So Annihilation, but I also think in terms of, again, like maybe even less obvious, Zodiac, but I think any movie where a character loses themselves, literally, physically, metaphorically, or emotionally, could be mentioned here. But I think Annihilation is a very good example of, we have the idea of what we're doing, we know who inspired it, but we're not going to like punch you in the face with it constantly.
Yeah.
What a great transition of the title I'm going to talk about.
Oh,
then.
Jesus. People
and I'll
get
go
punched
right
in the
into
face all the time?
No, the other one, getting lost in yourself in multiple ways. I went with another modern one, kind of like you, 2019's The Lighthouse.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we got some tentacles. Tentacles.
Completely different side of Lovecraft than what we've talked about so far. We've got the ocean, which plays a very big part of a lot of the cosmic horror here. We've got the tentacles. We've got the isolation and complete loneliness with somebody to drive yourself mad. And then suddenly these people become larger than life and weird beyond belief. And who knows what's real or not. And moral ambiguity of, do I trust this person with me? Do I not? I don't have any reason not to, but also fuck this guy. And should I fuck this guy? And everything else. Like
a lot of homoeroticism in the movie too, which is, I mean, lots of wieners, lots of penises in that movie. It's a lighthouse. It's called The Lighthouse, a vertical structure that's cylindrical. Come on.
The Lighthouse, if you have somehow never seen it, Robert Pattinson, Willem Dafoe in the middle of nowhere, and you just watch them lose their minds. Talking about beans, farting, touching themselves, discovering dead birds. There's a little bit of everything here. But what's funny, Lovecraft hit so many weird things, highlighting the word weird here. This movie is like every little frame of this movie is like, that's a Lovecraft frame. You can tell everything about this. You take a scene, you can implant that into almost any of the actual Lovecraft stories, and it makes sense. Like, this fits into Dagon. This fits into some aspects of From Beyond. This fits into so many of just the out of nowhere, what the fuckery that he always came up with, that you lose yourself as you're watching the film. And that's why I like this more than so many of these other ones that we're going to talk about tonight, because you watch this thing 3 different times, you feel 3 different ways about this movie.
Yep.
I love this movie so much.
I respect you swinging for the fences, because this is more of a swing than even Annihilation is. Like, because The Lighthouse is a movie that I just saw 2 weekends ago. Like,
see, I love that I've shown up and I'm the most normie. Like, yeah, Alien.
I mean, but that's the thing. Like,
seen Alien, right?
But at the time, like, Alien was such a thing that nobody had ever seen, that like you're really getting to the core of the idea. It's like, this is how pared down it had to be then for anyone to accept it. Now, like, The Lighthouse is, it's a big release with massive actors in it who aren't like, this is one of the early roles of theirs. Like, no, Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson are like operating at peak here. Like, I don't think, I mean, like, look, Willem Dafoe farting throughout the movie is really just, give me a super cut of Willem Dafoe farting over and over again, because that's really the best part of the movie. But
with his speech played over it.
Yeah. Oh, what a good film, man. Robert Eggers knows what he's doing, huh? Weird.
I would agree here. These are all great choices, and oddly complement each other very interestingly within the Lovecraft oeuvre, considering cosmic, sci-fi, very wet in one of them.
Very wet, yes.
So now we got a little deep on 2 of those. Let's get even deeper. Spencer, what's a movie that maybe isn't great as a first-time pick for somebody, but one that is still a really great film. But, maybe if they watch this first, it would turn them away from the idea of Lovecraft.
I like your gusto with that laugh.
Might turn you away. Well, okay, so this is a really big favorite movie of mine, and I don't think it generally gets talked about in terms of Lovecraft, but Ganja and Hess.
Yes.
I love Ganja and Hess, and in a certain respect, who needs Cthulhu when you have the history of Western colonialism and slavery as the background to the horror of people becoming vampires. But particularly, but the thing is, this is one where it is slow moving. It is because of the way that it was not just made, but kind of thrown away by its producers. Even though it's been restored in a form that is very rough. I think the way that it was made was rough, but the restoration of it preserves even more roughness of how it was treated. It is a slow movie. It is very strangely structured and put together. From the title onward, Ganja and Hess, and Ganja is not a character who enters until like halfway through the movie. That's right there. We got some weirdness that's going on. But this is, I think, also when we talk about Lovecraft, and I just gotta throw this down. This is necessary to understand, but I think it's part of what makes Lovecraft actually influential and interesting. Lovecraft, as many people listening to this, watching this, will know, super racist.
Oh man, thank God you finally brought it up. I was like, we're an hour into this.
I know we're an hour in. But so one of the things is that like I don't think that Bill Gunn, the director of Ganja and Hess, was directly influenced by Lovecraft, but I think his ideas dovetail in some really, really interesting ways. And it is notable that a number of, artists of color recently have taken on Lovecraft and the Lovecraft mythos and stories as a means of sort of flipping the script. And so one of the things that I think that's really interesting about Lovecraft is that this is a racist guy who's super xenophobic, super othering to other human beings, not just through the stories, and it's definitely in the stories, but boy, oh boy, you read the letters, what he thought about those Slavs. This guy was racist against everybody. So super xenophobic, but what comes through in these horror stories is an anxiety about colonialism, an anxiety about being the inheritor of colonialism. And what's really fascinating in Ganja and Hess is from the point of view of wealthy and educated African Americans who are contending with being insiders and outsiders at the same time. They can never be insiders with white and upper class society, but at the same time, they cannot be insiders with the people that they are descended from in Africa. And there is this like toggling of inside and outside going on. Also, Bill Gunn, as a bisexual director, is dealing with a lot of anxiety about his sexuality that it's not as direct as in his first movie Stop, which pretty much ruined his career. And that's one of the first big Warner Brothers movies to get totally deep sixed. If you think it's bad what they did to Coyote versus Acme, if you think it's bad what they did to Batgirl, Bill Gunn's Stop has been really, really suppressed for a really, really long time because it's a pretty straightforward bisexual movie, and it got an X rating for it and whatnot. So Ganja and Hess also has, built into it, an eroticism towards both women and men that is really fascinating. If you thought Saltburn was great, there's a great scene in Ganja and Hess. Bill Gunn was there first with Dwayne Jones from Night of the Living Dead licking blood off of a bathroom floor. And clearly coded because it's coming from Bill Gunn, the director, naked on the floor and bleeding. Definitely just as queer coded as anything going on in Saltburn, and I think a couple steps more disgusting. And this is like, pretty much right out of the gate. This is like maybe the break between the first and second act, if this is a movie that has acts. But it's also a movie that kind of represents a sort of madness in its structure or its anti-structure in a way. One of the things that's interesting is what's the nature of the vampirism that's in it? How does somebody become a vampire? It is very confusing in terms of timeline, narration, everything. Where exactly does this come from? There's a beat where, Hess is stabbed with this African knife that seems to be coded, but then it also is coded almost as a dream thing that happens between these two characters. I'm forgetting the name of Bill Gunn's character who commits suicide in it. But he, after this stabbing, where it appears that he stabs Dwayne Jones seems to be fine and unstabbed. I mean, yes, it could be a magical kind of, dagger, but it also could be an imaginary one. And he's also, sort of in the narrative is described as being addicted to the blood before this guy ever arrives in his life. So there's a lot of lack of clarity going on. And then once Ganja arrives, I mean, she has one of the greatest arrival scenes in any movie ever. She's like calling from a payphone, and it's just this beautiful shot of her lips, with the payphone. And eventually, Ganja says, "I'll send a limo to pick you up." And she's, "What terminal are you at?" She says, "I'm at Terminal 2, and he won't miss me because I'm that evil." And then she goes on to sort of reveal a class level of anxiety and horror in the way that she treats the butler at Hess's house. So it's a movie that works on all these different levels. I barely can. Plot synopsis? No, I'm not going to give you a plot synopsis for Ganja and Hess. You just got to go in and give yourself over to crazy dissolves and sound design and strange monologues that just kind of erupt out of their characters and don't seem in any normative way to be driven by the plot, but they are sort of creating an overall environment. And that's a big thing that you brought up with Annihilation. Annihilation is a very environmental movie, and Lovecraft is a very environmental writer and influence, about these kind of horrific, decaying sorts of environments. And Ganja and Hess is less a normal movie than it's an environment that you step into.
Interesting. I have not seen it.
Oh, you got to see it. You got to do a Culture Cast episode. You got to do it.
Okay. You want to be on it? You kind of signed yourself up.
I signed myself up. I'm happy. I could keep talking about Ganja and Hess. I realized I'm taking up so much time. I gotta shut up here. But yeah, great movie.
Ganja and Hess is a masterpiece, and you don't need to shut up. You're doing very.
Yeah, I was about to say, what's shutting up? Just keep talking. Ryan,
what are your answers?
I want to say, Ryan, you answer first. I went first last time.
All right, I'm gonna go for what I hope is a little bit of a not so mainstream. Although if you're in certain horror corners, this is a little mainstream, possibly. But I discovered this movie by just randomly finding the DVD in a Las Vegas shop. Way back, like right when it came out. This movie is from 2008, and I didn't know anybody in it. I didn't know the director. I really only picked it because the cover looked fucking weird, and that is Lovecraft, and that led me to 2008's Splinter. Nice. So Splinter is about a couple that are going by what is teased in the film for a very short moment, like of course, it's always this. There's like a nuclear testing facility or something like that. That they just drive by a sign. You see it for a split second. And then they get conned, basically. Somebody attacks them and gets in their car and makes them go back to a gas station. And as they go back to this gas station, there's this... I dare to not even say creature. There's like this thing that is in the back of this gas station that attacks the clerk of the gas station. And it is a creature that is literally splintering itself and going in and consuming every living creature that it comes in contact with. And so these three individuals, they go into the gas station and try to hole up there. This thing sees that they're in the gas station and tries to come after them. Now, what's great is, like many of these Lovecraft stories, it runs into this like almost nihilist feeling by the end of it, because it's like, well, who fucking cares? This thing's going to chase us till we're dead. And they're doing everything they possibly can. No matter what you do, you put it you set it on fire, you put it in the freezer, you chop it up. Like, this thing will always just keep coming back. But what really appeals to me about this movie is, man, the effects in this thing are great. They make everything that it consumes look like the gnarliest contortionist ever put on film. The splintering effects in this are really well done, and it seems like to me nobody saw this movie. I'm seeing 4 glazed over eyes, so I will stick it there. Splinter is very good, and the biggest name from it still, which is now 16 years later, Shea Wiggum's in this, and he's rather good in it. He plays, of course, the bad guy that conned them and got in their car and everything. But this is a magnificent movie. It's a really great, like, it's 10:30 and I'm half awake movie, and I really want to wake up. You put this in, and 15 minutes after it's on, you're like, what the fuck is this? This thing is wild.
Wow. I got to see it.
This movie's amazing.
I have never even heard of it, and I am also intrigued now. I like that.
Like
4 glazed over.
This is another Culture Cast episode now. Chris.
Yeah, apparently. Well, and I was going to say, like, for me, in terms of like my answer, it was another, like you just alluded to, Ryan, like nobody saw this movie, myself included. And I will say why. It's because it came out in 2020. Talk about the height of cosmic horror for in terms of like the reality of it. I mean, like realistically, like that might be the first time in my life where I'm like, what is actually fucking happening out in the world?
Yeah.
Like now we're in kind of like post-capitalist dystopia now where it's like everything sucks and everything's just heading towards the sun anyways and all the resources are being gobbled up. So it's like I can't really comprehend that either, which is why I try not to think about it. But the pandemic was a hard thing for a lot of people to handle, so everybody just didn't, I guess is what happened. So speaking of not taking care of ourselves during the pandemic, that included not being able to see movies in theaters, which I would like to see this movie in a big screen because I think the opening of the movie is pretty nuts, and then the movie kind of calms down and does a very interesting rebuild up to kind of another peak. But 2020's The Empty Man, David Pryor's film, which, again, like for me, it's not Lovecraft on the nose of it, but the cosmic horror, like it is Lovecraft, but it isn't because it's not talking about Cthulhu per se.
Oh, absolutely.
But like, you know, what they're getting at is more, and again, like what they're really getting at is something that has a much longer tradition in the world than Cthulhu did. It's, you know, we're talking about not dream demons, but externalized dream creatures existing in the real world as a tulpa, which is what the movie is kind of getting at and where it kind of comes at. And the opening of the movie seems like it makes no sense until you get to the end of the movie and you're like, oh, okay. And like you said with Ganjan, has less said about the movie's plot, the better, because it's a movie that you need to see and watch the first time to understand it. And then once you've seen it the first time, when you rewatch it, it's like, oh, wow, this is just recontextualizes everything, which a good twist in a movie does. But the idea of the unknowable horror driving people insane, and then our main character also seemingly being driven insane, possibly, I think is again like just touches on the Lovecraftian idea of like a horror so vast, old, and immutable that the idea of it, giving it a space in your brain is enough to drive you insane. Like just the smallest splinter inserted into your brain can just infect you completely. And so, I mean, for me, you know, I kind of wanted to answer with something else that David Pryor has done, because I think his episode on Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, The Autopsy, which is based off of a short story from, I want to say, the 60s, 80s, 60s, 80s. The name of the story is The Autopsy, but it's in Michael Shea's Polemius, I believe. It's not a movie, so it doesn't really count, but I think it's similar to The Empty Man in terms of like the cosmic horror being so unable to comprehend. It's like you said, Spencer, it's like best not to. Yeah, because when you do, it's like this just kind of becomes all encompassing and it just takes over everything. So I like The Empty Man. Nobody saw it though, like literally, because it came out in 2020. Yeah, but like we've made it clear that we are not necessarily the everyday audience, right? Like 2020 was not a calendar year for films, let's put it that way. Even though many of us sat at home and watched movies, there weren't a lot of new things coming out that were moving the needle. So that's my pick.
I mean, the first 20 minutes alone
are
like
wild.
Yeah, the first 20 minutes is like a perfect little Lovecraft story.
Yeah, totally.
Just by itself. And then the rest of the movie is great. But like that first 20 minutes alone is like a kind of, best not to say anymore. Right. For those who haven't seen it, just go avail yourselves.
Well, and that's the other thing about it is it does really traffic in some of the other things that Lovecraft was doing, where you have like a detective researching something and chasing after something, and that process drives them to the brink. And like that's the other thing that, again, we In the Mouth of Madness doesn't count because it's too on the nose. I think this is an interesting kind of counterpoint to that, where it's like, here's how you can kind of do the same idea, because there is the idea of, again, fiction and nonfiction, and where is that line that The Empty Man does traffic in, which Lovecraft kind of sort of did, but maybe didn't necessarily mean to do it as much as he did. Again, how much he meant to do it is kind of up for interpretation. But yeah, I definitely think this is a movie that more people should check out. And I think the only thing, and this I understand might be a little bit of a stumbling block, it is a long movie.
It's long.
2.5 hours, which is
2.5 hours.
It's a lot for that kind of movie. It's a lot, but I think it also benefits from being given a rather long tail to fuck around and just kind of set up the movie. Because a lot of ways it reminds me of like a Ty West film. It's like we're just going to spend a lot of time, which is not a bad thing. Like it that in and of itself is another good thing. But yeah, The Empty Man is my answer here.
Fantastic.
Still blows me away this is owned by Disney.
Right? Boy, isn't it? Well, so is Alien, for that matter. So,
Rocky Horror Picture Show.
All of the cultural touchstones are now owned by
Breckenridge.
Yep. God, the House of the Mouse, baby. They're just going to sit on those eggs. They're never going to let them hatch. They're just going to sit on them. It's fine.
Oh, man. That's awful.
All right, then. We have come to our third and perhaps most vague and wide question.
Okay.
What is the biggest impact that Lovecraft, without Lovecraft films, has had on pop culture? Now, remember, this does not necessarily have to be a specific film. It can be, but doesn't have to be. It can be something like inspiring other filmmakers. It could be increasing environmental awareness or anything like that. Whatever you choose.
Okay, so I'm going to end up naming a few different films.
This is your opportunity to go wild.
So I'm going to start with Psycho, which is not typically thought of as Lovecraftian, but there are a couple of things going on here. One, Robert Bloch, who wrote the novel that Psycho is based on, was actually a sort of protege of Lovecraft. And then where the novel came from and everything is like a kind of real life Lovecraftian thing that I'm going to get into in relationship to Psycho and some other movies. Very, very strange. Robert Bloch went to report on the doings of Ed Gein in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin butcher in the 1950s. And Ed Gein has inspired all the best serial killers in movies. Whether you're talking about Buffalo Bill or in Silence of the Lambs or clearly the main character in Maniac, also based on Ed Gein.
Leatherface goes without saying.
Leatherface in Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all the best. They're based on Ed Gein. So a couple of interesting things about this. Robert Bloch started working on the novel before it was known that Ed Gein had a particular weird relationship with his mother. And that he had possibly, it's still not totally known, that he had possibly exhumed his mother's body and had her, in the house. Bloch didn't know about that, and he wrote it in. Similarly, he did not know, this is getting us into some, appropriately controversial kind of territory because of what Ed Gein has meant in popular culture. And I'm not really concentrating on the gender element, but we should mention this. This is another thing that Robert Bloch wasn't really aware of, the sort of woman suit idea that Ed Gein had created, a kind of woman suit, was not something that he was aware of, but in some strange way seemed to interpret this into Psycho. Now, one of the things that I've also got to say is that some of these elements are a little more vague in terms of the reality, than is usually thought of. And Psycho and Silence of the Lambs have done a lot to sort of cement Ed Gein as potentially trans. I think it's an unknowable, strange thing. I don't want to go into those waters. There are folks that know better than I do. But so here's why I say Psycho. Well, one, hugely influential, but it actually contains a very specific kind of Lovecraftian idea of the unthinkable that I don't think that most people have recognized before. And this goes into other films. I have not heard this theory from anybody else. I would be happy to find out that other people believe the same thing. But if you pay attention to the voices that are in Marion Crane's head in the first big chunk of Psycho, that are talking in her head while she's driving, and then when she arrives, and then she kind of magically hears Mother up the hill. Yeah, like, this is not possible for her to hear Mother up there. It's very much coded as in her head. But then that voice, after she dies, continues in Norman's head. When Norman kills Marion, there's something even more radical and weirder than this, and of course weirder than the stupid explanation that the psychiatrist does at the end. There is this like strange level where they are psychically tied together. And that the movie is kind of psychotic in a way in presenting to us these voices that can be heard that continue after the character has died. Norman's mother has the same like kind of timbre. I mean, it's a number of different people performing the voice to like mess with us. But it's recorded in the same way. It's in the same sound space in the way that the movie is mixed. It is in Norman's head in a similar way as has been established in Marion's head. And previously, she's had these other voices established in her head. And there's a way in which you can read who's the psycho. Is she psycho for the way that she hears these voices that are imaginary and seem to be leading her to a place? Or is Norman Bates psycho? Well, yeah, obviously. But then in terms of the like, weird gender qualities, Marion, when she dies, passes a baton to Norman, who is, more than a little gender queer coded throughout the rest of the film. And there's a way in which the protagonist baton gets passed from one to another. But maybe there's also a way, and I like this kind of reading myself, that Marion becomes Norman. Norman becomes Marion. There's not just a transfer of sort of the protagonist in the movie, but a transfer of consciousness that is set up, through this. Now, why am I picking on this as a Lovecraftian idea? Well, one, it's a mysterious thing that's beyond the characters. This is cosmic. This is bigger than any one of the characters. It is not a Freudian thing that is located in Marion or Norman, much as the movie tries to tell you that. It is a cosmic thing that is passed among them and is a surreal, kind of, presence that's going on, and something that is just beyond full understanding or comprehension. Now, I'm going to get into a couple more movies that sort of do a similar thing. First, I'm going to go to Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, and then, of course, Twin Peaks Season 3. I think Twin Peaks as a whole fits, but I'm going to talk particularly about Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me. The Bob, very much revealed that Bob is a kind of cosmic horror figure within cosmic horror rules in Twin Peaks. But within Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me, there's a really, really interesting thing that's going on that I think is... Lynch taking these ideas from Lovecraft out of the air and making something even more significant out of them. He sort of unifies the Bob presence into Leland as, the abuser, both, sexual and violent abuser of his own daughter. And Laura actually going through a thing where Bob is sort of entering her as well. Throughout Fire Walk With Me, that this is this transient sort of evil that passes from person to person, but the evil is also in these people. It isn't just that like the transient evil, the devil made me do it. It's that on some level, Leland Palmer wants to do these things that Bob then fulfills. Laura Palmer wants to do things that Bob fulfills. And Cheryl Lee in Fire Walk With Me has the greatest ever Lovecraftian performance because it is beyond comprehension in the scene where she and Bobby accidentally kill the cop and she starts to laugh. She goes into this like incredible, strange laughter that I've never seen anything like in any other film in response. And it's a horrifying situation. And she laughs and seems to inhabit at once both the kind of Bob evil of taking delight in this horrifying thing that has happened, and yet also at the same time is an innocent child who is not interpreting the situation correctly. She is both at the same time, and I've never seen such bothness in one actor, especially an extreme level of bothness. Now, from Fire Walk With Me, I'm going to descend, but I also love this movie, and I will throw down for it any time. And you other Friday the 13th fans, you better fucking step off if you do not like Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. It is absolutely amazing. It is an incredible movie. The spirit of Jason sort of floats through this movie in very strange, indefinable ways. And the murders begin with this completely unmotivated kind of moment of this one guy at the sort of I'm at the what's the best word for it? This kind of camp. Halfway house for people with mental illness, teenagers with mental illness, all put together in this like very questionable sort of summer camp environment, and we have this like unmotivated murder of one of the campers or inmates by another, while we also at the same time have Tommy Jarvis from the previous movie, now kind of grown up and turned into a different actor because Corey Feldman wasn't available. He's receiving these visions of Jason that seem to be driving him closer and closer and closer until the very end of the movie to becoming a killer. And then there's this paramedic that seems to be, he ends up as the like weird Scooby-Doo explanation of, oh, it was the paramedic who was Jason all along in this one. But I actually think this is kind of amazing. The implications of how the violence spreads among people is very much like the kind of Fire Walk With Me notion of Bob, but it's even more depersonalized. We can sort of think of Jason as an allegory for it within the story, but Jason's not quite exactly Bob. Jason's not precisely inhabiting these characters. It's more like the characters want to inhabit Jason. It goes in this other direction. I think this movie is absolutely incredible. It's maybe not the best of the Friday the 13th series, but it's my favorite. I can make these distinctions. The best is either 2 or 4, depending on which I've seen most recently. I'm a big fan of Baghead Jason, and of course, I love Tommy getting to kill Jason by the end. But this is a Lovecraftian evil force that is, at large in the world. And so these are 3 movies, among others. I mean, there are others working with this same kind of idea in different kind of ways. Even it's more explained, so it's not as exciting to me, while also being more Lovecraftian because of that Necronomicon. But in Jason Goes to Hell, we have a similar notion of an evil that goes from body to body, but it's not as intensely Lovecraftian. I don't think that it quite has this unknowable, undefinable, intense quality to it. So
it's more literal in that.
It's
movie.
Much more literal. Yeah.
I think it's funny because some of the things that I had here to mention are because you asked, like, when have we seen characters exhibiting those two things? So I would actually throw into the ring here. And again, I think that this movie is now one that is looked at. I mean, I think it was looked at fondly now than when it came out a couple of years ago. But now I think, again, like, this director is really pushing the envelope. But I think there's some cosmic horror in Midsummer, right? Towards the end, I mean, we have a moment that you alluded to in something else, which is a character, the agony of making that decision is not necessarily being felt, but the joy of what you've done is. And that, like, horror turns to joy, and it's like your inability to comprehend what's going on just drives you mad. And speaking of pissing people off, because I'm going to take my opportunity to piss off a whole bunch of people. I think in terms of seeing Lovecraftian things where they necessarily weren't, and maybe someone embracing them lightly, I'm not going to give him all the credit in the world because I don't think he's necessarily done a great body of work in horror. I know I am in the minority here on that, but they touched on it in Halloween Ends. They really did. They tried to. They went there. They sort of did. Then they backed the fuck off, which was a real bummer to me.
Wishy-washy. Yep.
Yeah, so wishy-washy. Because, again, there's a moment in that film where one of the characters is staring into Jason's eyes and he's staring into his eyes. And that scene could have, fan reading is that there is a transference of something to him that could never be explained tangibly. And in a lot of ways, I mean, I think Halloween as a franchise post the second one is kind of trafficking in cosmic horror anyways, because Jason is, or not Jason, but I mean, again, Jason and I think Michael both are kind of in this camp of, at some point they've exceeded reality's ability to contain them. And, you know, Michael Myers is, I mean, again, at later movies, he's just a fucking thing. He's just a thing. It's not a person anymore. It's an idea externalized into reality. And it's, you know, it's evil. I mean, that's what, you know, evil dies tonight. You know, fucking just parrot it over and over. But that's kind of what Michael is in the third David Gordon Green movie, and kind of the second one, but the third one, it's like, it's the evil that still exists in the world that can be and should be respected and looked at, but at the same time, don't stare into the void because it will stare back into you. And, you know, they, like you said, wishy-washy. It's kind of a shame, but they're right there more than they have been with more of the movies in terms of actually addressing what is Michael Myers at his core, other than just evil in a shell.
Can I throw out some Halloween takes here for a moment?
By all means.
Well, so in terms of Carpenter, who comes up a lot when you talk about the Lovecraftian, you know, not surprising that we're talking about Michael Myers here, because I think from the very first Halloween, it has been argued that Michael Myers is a Lovecraftian kind of figure.
100%.
The shape,
exactly.
Yeah.
The shape. And the kind of abstraction that's done there. Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. This is a very Lovecraftian movie as well. You know, that's a very, very exciting kind of thing. And now to really start pissing people off, though I know there are big fans of this movie out there, Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 is fucking great.
Hell yeah. We were singing the praises already, man. You're in good company.
Okay, good. No, absolute masterwork, and especially the first 20 odd minutes. You know, there's some ropey stuff after that, but I'll forgive anything for those first 20 minutes of true dreamlike, nothing else like it outside of Italian cinema, you know, kind of absolute craziness for the first big chunk. The white horse, Sherry Moon Zombie as the mother appearing. You know, where does Michael go? How does he get there? Who cares? Who knows? We are in the cosmic. So throughout, Halloween, the Lovecraftian is very strong.
And the other thing I would mention, because we've mentioned Dan O'Bannon, I think Dan O'Bannon treats zombies very Lovecraftian in Return of the Living Dead. I mean, it is a stifling force that is unable to get out from under, even once Louisville, Kentucky is nuked. Even once we've gone as far as human technology can take us, it's not enough. And like that alone should drive you mad. Because like you said with Splinter, Ryan, like at some point this just going to take over and there's nothing we can do. Right. So why are we even fighting? Like just give in to the process, become one with it, right? You know, Sam Neill says it in The Mouth of Madness, like, what's my them? You want to know what my them is? And it's like... Yeah. I mean, again, at times it can be interpreted as like deeply schizophrenic and paranoid, but the movie says that's not the case. Like the movie says like this shit's going on, it's for real, but it's, you know, to bring in Barney Miller, it's the paranoids with proof that matter, not necessarily the paranoids that are just paranoid. When it's the paranoids with proof, it's a lot more of a intense conversation because again, what do you do when it's all encompassing and stifling and overwhelming? Well, Return of the Living Dead, nothing. You do nothing. Nothing matters and you can't do anything.
Well, and Return of the Living Dead has the best piece of exposition in all of horror. Seriously, when the zombie on the table at the morgue talks, and the answer to like why do you eat brains is the pain of death.
Right.
Death itself is like what you're up against, and you know, and the death itself is animating the undead.
Right.
You know, the pain of being dead means you have to eat brains and call for more paramedics.
Yeah. Oh God, Dan O'Bannon just he nails it so hard, right? Like with Return of the Living Dead, it's just good. For me, we haven't done a zombie movie episode yet, but that I don't know how that won't be my answer, because it's one of those movies that like I watch it frequently and I love it so much. But it does have at the end, you're just like, okay, and we're back to square one, because again, like it's just so overwhelming and all-encompassing in it being a threat that you can't comprehend it. You really can't. Like, and best not to try, because if you do, you will drive yourself mad.
Yeah. Ryan, what's your answer?
We mentioned Carpenter. I got to bring up the thing here. This movie.
Oh yeah.
Lovecraftian beyond belief. I mean, not only is it the same isolation and who cares what's going to happen, because we can't tell anything with the way that we're living right now. Everything's a question. That's the amazing part about this movie. The thing that always gets me, that always gets me about this movie is the thing just sort of always was and always will be, and we know that. And that existential aspect of that is just, when I'm done with this, I just want to sit and say, like, fuck, like 90 times, and then still just be depressed, and then watch it again and be like, yeah, this is amazing. And then on top of that, we get great, like, tentacle effects. We get great interactions with these people that lost all trust. So, like, all morals are gone because you can't trust a single person in the world. There's no real hope. And when you break it down on an individual level like that, this is like pure Lovecraft. Every single character in this is the essence of these Lovecraftian characters that we've been hearing about for 100 years. And then, unfortunately, the end of the movie is perfect because it's just another giant question, and it's so well done.
So well done. Well, and then if you really think about what the monster is in the thing, it's not just that it's given a vague sort of name. When you really break it down, the monster is nothing.
Yep.
The only things that we can see from the monster is what it has previously inhabited. Yep. And so all the tentacles and everything are what it's inhabited, but what is it in itself? There is no answer. And actually, to the degree that there's an answer, it's a void.
It's nothing everything.
Nothing and everything.
Well, and also, Ryan, to your point, like the end of the movie really touches on something that I think, In the Mouth of Madness touches on, and so many of these Lovecraftian things, which is the person versus the group, or the community versus the singular individual. And in the Mouth of Madness, there's that great line where something to the effect of like, well, what if everybody else goes insane? And it's like, well, are you sane now? And it's like, so if I was insane first and now everyone else is insane, does that make me sane? And in the thing, it's that same thing of who is sane and who isn't. And in a post-truth society that we live in now, if you can't tell the difference, does it really matter? And I mean, we live in a Lovecraftian horror movie. In reality, is kind of what it feels like. Like the unknowingness and the overwhelming unknowingness of everything is hard to fathom, which is why so many people don't. But I think, to your point, Ryan, like using something like a movie is probably the easiest way, especially when it's just called The Thing. Or, I mean, again, we've kind of alluded to it, and I think it bears mentioning, but Stephen King's It. I mean, Stephen King, Dark Tower in general just exists within this world of like the fear on the other side of the door. You don't know what it is, but it could be anything. It just decides to show itself as a clown, which is, I mean, again, in the source material, in the sacred texts, that is what is. I mean, that's what's offered, is this thing goes out of its way to be scary the way it knows you are scared, which is a knowing that it has that we do not have, which is horrifying. And then again, the individual versus the group. I mean, not so much in It, but in The Thing and in The Mouth of Madness, when you are no longer an individual and you're part of the group, what does that mean? In The Thing, it means, like you said, Spencer, the void, nothing. You are now nothing. Your individualness has been assimilated into the group, and now you are nothing because you are everything, or all encompassing all at once.
Well, and not to be too political, but this is again back to the notion of the intense fear created through colonialism and having the fruits of colonialism. What is it to be colonized? And what is to be colonized by nothing?
Right.
Like taking
or
it out
colonized from the inside out, like in
colonized
Alien.
from the exactly, yeah, right. So Alien, very much a sort of colonization image, and we have the colonialism throughout a lot of this stuff. And I think this is one of the big things that keeps Lovecraft really current, is that we live in a world created through colonialism. It's one of the things that has made him uncancelable, anti-cancelable, in spite of the outrageous racism. I mean, just read some of the stories and you find out the name of his cat, which I'm not going to say, on here. It's
one can only imagine. Go look it up, folks.
Go look it up. Get an audiobook of Lovecraft stories and listen to it in mixed company and see what happens.
Hey, do you guys know what Brazil nuts are called? By the way, I have a bowl of them on the table while we listen to our Lovecraft.
Exactly, but I think this is one of the things about it that like. This is an intense and necessary kind of allegory for the lives that we live, and it comes up over and over again. And that back to the idea of like what you can master. These are movies that are about not being able to. You can even learn what it is and not master it. I see They Live over your shoulder. That's another Lovecraftian Carpenter film, and that's about even once you have secret knowledge. It doesn't drive Rowdy Roddy Piper mad, but it's a mad world in which he doesn't totally succeed by the end. The knowledge is not enough to overcome, this force. And They Live is a pretty simplified Lovecraftian idea, but but even so, even that fairly literalistic and simplified idea, Carpenter works with it to create this really fascinating kind of allegory ultimately that works with how you can't necessarily win.
Speaking of not winning, I think it's also surprising to me that none of us have mentioned The Mist. I guess, is it too on the nose?
No. I mean, The Mist is totally in there. And, the Stephen King story, which is definitely in my top 3 Stephen King anythings.
Right. It's fantastic.
It's fantastic. That novella is just so perfect. And the movie, definitely, the Darabont,
that
it's
ending,
a TV
man.
show, right? Oh,
yeah.
The ending is so bleak.
I know, but what is so great about it is like I feel like it takes what Stephen King was doing in that story and adds just that little bit more Lovecraftian nature to it, which is there is no escape ultimately. Even when you, when you think there is, there isn't. Yeah. And then being driven mad at the end. I mean, that scene with Tom Jane at the end is just every time just gets me so. He's so sad. Tom Jane is just so sad. If they had just waited 2 more seconds, I'd like grab the screen and be like, just wait another second, bro. Nope. But that's what makes it so great is the idea of like, no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, at the end of the day, you're fucked. You can't get out of its way.
Yeah. Well, and okay. So here's a thing that I want to throw out, and not many movies work precisely this way, but to turn positive for a moment, not being able to master the situation doesn't only mean that you're fucked. It can also mean that you're forced to focus on, what is most important and what you can focus on. If the Lovecraftian kind of cosmic forces arrayed against you are not conquerable, at the same time, you got to live a life within them. Now this is not a happy ending, but I do want to suggest another Lovecraft Without Lovecraft movie that moves in this direction for a horror film. They're definitely fucked at the end, for sure. But the ending of The Birds is actually really, really interesting in that the arc of the movie is to create a family. And it like Tippi Hedren's character, Melanie Daniels, she goes mad by the end of the film, but she also is surrounded by people who have taken her in. Jessica Tandy doesn't even like her through most of the movie and is then taking care of her. It's not a hopeful ending. They drive away into a world that's just full of birds that are going to attack people. But I do find this element of hope, which is unusual for Hitchcock. A Hitchcock happy ending is like a sort of cackling, crazy sort of thing, like the end of North by Northwest, where it's like a great big dirty joke, But this is a kind of strangely, if not happy, provisional ending that I think is interesting. And I just want to point out, for folks influenced by this kind of work, the ending of Alien has a happiness to it. If you take that as just one movie, however much she's fucked by being left in hypersleep in the middle of the universe. But yeah, I have to throw that out a little bit. It's the Mist creates a good measure of ultimate nihilism against which to sort of measure the possibilities of hope within and of happy endings within this way of thinking. Because I don't think it's precisely a genre. I'll reveal that what I've been up to here is not necessarily like, oh, this is precisely a subgenre. It's a little bit more like a framework for thinking about, like, Lovecraft provides a framework for thinking about, how things work, and a framework that is different and opposed to this sort of traditional Aristotelian like fantasy of mastery. Though, to be fair to Aristotle, I say Aristotelian, to be fair to Aristotle, he was dealing with tragedy. But American cinema is like tragedy by Aristotle, except with happy endings.
Right.
And that's the thing. We make it by the Aristotelian rules, but Aristotle, was dealing with tragedy where things turn out very badly for Mr. Oedipus. Among others.
And also Lovecraft, I think, at least for me, in terms of the things that I've read and then the interpretations that people have done with it in terms of Lovecraft Without Lovecraft, there's also this intimate exploration of like the self and the self's place in the greater machine of things, and whether or not you even matter as a cog within it, which is, again, part of the unknowableness of everything and the kind of, again, self versus the populace. Because, again, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, I think, is a good example. Yes. Again, you don't know. And when you do know, it doesn't matter anyways. Like, by the time you find out what the reality is, it's too late. I mean, it's not surprising that Lovecraft was an atheist because in a lot of ways, not to get overtly religious, but as far as I'm concerned, and I was talking about this with my wife the other day, by the time you know what the fucking score is, it doesn't fucking matter. You're dead. That's how this works. The only way to know what the answer is to make a decision that is irreversible in its severity. And so what's interesting is the idea of, well, I will know once I find out, but then it doesn't really matter because by that point it's too late. Is part of the Lovecraft idea. It's, again, you've exposed yourself to something knowingly, willingly, sometimes even by choice or, again, something like Prometheus by design, and you have now lost yourself completely. But it's that initial curiosity, it's the engaging with it to begin with that ultimately is the undoing. It's your problem. I mean, look, like in Evil Dead with the Necronomicon, the fact that they open it is enough. In something, in so many things like, Cabin in the Woods is kind of, again, kind of traffics in tropes, but the idea of disturbing something and that's enough, like touching something by accident. I know that, Ryan, you and I had talked about a film that's in theaters right now that has a similar idea of like you do something by accident and the cosmic horror that you have brought upon yourself is so hard for you to fathom that Like,
Sure.
just give up. Like, just give up. And like you said, Spencer, like, most of these stories have no happy ending because the ending that is given is the one that is deserved, which is you are facing the void. And guess what? There's nothing beyond it. So deal with it. Or don't. Or go crazy. Like,
well, what you just threw out about the self, I think, is also a really important thing in terms of cinema's relationship to Lovecraftian ideas. Cinema at base requires at least cartoon level characters. And in some Lovecraft tales, and this is actually not a dig because it works in the terms that he sets. There's not even really a main character. There's kind of Lovecraft putting out ideas of the world through the narration of someone who is only a set of ideas and not really as much what we think of as a character. But movies are really great at character, require character, performances are built around character. And so this is another title that I just want to throw out because I think that Daphne du Maurier was a really great Lovecraftian writer who sort of took Lovecraft's ideas and put them into characters. I already mentioned The Birds, which is a very different story from Hitchcock's version, and that is about being confronted. The story is so good. The Daphne du Maurier story, go read it right now. It's incredible. The story that she wrote of The Birds is about an ordinary father with his family confronted with this, horrifying. And the story is really, I've read it multiple times now, and it's actually scarier every time thinking about these like attacks by birds. And the father's sense of his self, his masculinity, and his running the family is completely shattered by having to repeatedly lie to his family to convince them that everything's going to be okay when it is manifestly not going to be okay. And this is where it goes into madness. And I'm going to name another movie and also story by originally by Daphne du Maurier, Don't Look Now, which has a very intense internal wrestling with a Lovecraftian force, represented by this second sight that it cannot be understood. And as a result of not being properly understood, kills the protagonist.
Yeah. There's nothing. Once you know it, it's too late. Like,
once you know it, it's too late. Well, and so I'm going to add another element of, because you were just talking about this identity to it. So an interesting thing about it, this is tricky for talking about Daphne du Maurier, but there's evidence that she was trans. She talked about herself as a boy a lot, and she was definitely queer. That's well known. Transness, again, hard to say given the times, and like language and concepts are all changed. In the Don't Look Now story versus the movie, there's a whole thing at the beginning. It's set up at the beginning thinking that these two old ladies are actually men in drag. And that they have the second sight. And so the story and the movie, to a lesser degree, I think actually kind of functions a little bit as a trans allegory of, not fully understanding what is within you and needing to bring it out. And while this story turns out badly because, the main character is ultimately repressed, Donald Sutherland is too repressed to deal with the knowledge of his second sight. I think there's a side of hopefulness to this, that if you can recognize it and work with it like these ladies do, they survive. They can deal with their second sight. And it truly is second sight as well, because there's a blindness. And if we take, for instance, again, in the movie, it's two old women, but in the story, it really is set up with like, what could even be at the beginning of the story. It's actually kind of offensive the way that this married couple is making fun of these two women who they're thinking of as men in drag or as trans women, and they're making fun of them. And but then by the end, they are proven to be sort of right in having embraced and understanding, this otherwise not quite understandable power. So there's a lot. I don't know. There's a lot that's interesting. I like Du Maurier better than I like Lovecraft to sit down and read. And Rebecca as well has a lot going on in it that's very Lovecraftian. Now, was she influenced by Lovecraft? I kind of don't think so. But they were influenced by the same stuff. And I think they had similar like anxieties and concerns that they're putting out through their stuff. And Du Maurier pushes more in the realm of character, like you were just talking about, Chris, which I think is essential to this cinematic genre of Lovecraft without Lovecraft.
Well, definitely the cinematic, the cinematic skew. And that's the thing. I mean, again, that's in my mind, that's why we have seen so few actual straight Lovecraft adaptations, because like you alluded to, the idea is not really, though here's a character and here's the things that they go do. It's here's what's happening. And this is happening in a world where these things should not happen, theoretically, or the existence of them kind of breaks the facade. I mean, again, the idea of if tomorrow aliens landed in New York City in Central Park, walked out and said, "We are aliens, we come from another universe," that right there would literally drive people insane. That right there, that alone would drive a percentage, probably even a larger percentage than I'd be willing to give a number to here, mad, because it's like, what does this mean for anything now? Like,
and that's why the government is hiding the UFOs.
I mean, it could very well be. Again, like in my mind, part of this goes back to the idea of what happens when we know the thing we shouldn't know, and the question ultimately becomes, be careful what you wish for, because it will bite back. I mean, so many things that I love, like Videodrome, even. Again, the loss of the self within the greater context of the populace. I think so much about what you said at the beginning of this episode, that Lovecraft doesn't deserve this. And in a lot of ways, he really didn't deserve to have as much of his stuff being accepted this way, because there are better writers out there, but not throwing out broad ideas like this that can be so manipulated by everybody else in a way that is either minimalist interpretation or a maximalist interpretation, where I'm just going to go full bore. Like, we're never going to see Guillermo del Toro's movie of In the Mountains of Madness, which is fine. We don't need it. But,
we don't need it, no.
But because we've got everything else now that is so much more interpretive of what the ideas are, less just a straight adaptation of this thing.
Yeah. Well, and again, as like a kind of framework for storytelling, or a framework for evaluating storytelling, this responds, Lovecraft's big idea is it's a response to newer realities. It's a response to knowledge that science imparts. It's an idea that has existed, I think, actually at different times. I mean, to go back to Greek tragedy, I think you can make some arguments that there's a pre-Lovecraftian strain and that kind of thing, but there are particular terms that have changed over time that Lovecraft synthesizes through the literature, and so then I will say deserves all this. Even if whatever, or whether the writing is the absolute best,
right?
The ideas are out there, and you know what? We don't generally see adaptations of. A lot of philosophy used to be done through dialogues, throughout all of philosophy. There's, until fairly recently, dialogues were like a main way of expressing the ideas, sort of putting these people together, sort of from the Socratic dialogues forward, and also creating meta texts. You got, this was written by this person, not by the actual philosopher. You got those kinds of tricks that go on in order to frame the work in particular ways. And so, Lovecraft has just been very good at like framing these like philosophical and dramatic ideas that then other artists have been able to use and really run with.
And like you said with Burroughs, like I can't believe we have Naked Lunch as a movie, because the source material is. I mean, I read Naked Lunch 2 years ago. Like it's a book that I pick up when I get super stoned, because it's one of those things that's just like, I'm not saying you have to be stoned to read it, but it itself as a text is a vibe. What it is doing is not necessarily entertaining you as much
Right.
as presenting you with ideas, which, I mean, again, Ryan, you and I were talking about the movie that had that moment in it where characters are doing something accidentally. It's even better when they have done nothing to deserve it and it's just happening. And something like, and I know Ryan is probably going to laugh that he has to even write this down, but something like Skinamarink from last year, it has that, again, like the unknowingness of what is going on, the inability to perceive, obviously because you're a child or you're being put in the child's POV in that film is how it needs to be interpreted. But again, the idea of pairing cosmic horror with the idea of a child's inability to comprehend it is pretty smart. I mean, again, it kind of maybe is a little obvious, but nobody had done it. And so again, like that, again, those ideas are still here. It's just, I don't need to see Cthulhu, I think is kind of the thing here. Like, I don't need to see those things to understand where you're coming from with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ground to a halt right there.
I know. Right then and there.
Well, I don't know. One last thing that I'll mention is just that, like, the drama of a few of these stories where Lovecraft has characters, you know, Dagon being a big example of, like, the discovery that you yourself are the frightening thing. This is also something that I think is really, really, important, and that has been dealt with increasingly, like, since, you know, the 1970s. That the monstrous thing that you fear is, you know, yourself. You're going to be one of the fish people.
Right.
You just thought the fish people were scary, but by the end, you are one of the fish people. And that's maybe not so bad. I mean, Lovecraft actually positions it as a little bit more neutral. And to go back to talking about Cronenberg really thinks in this outside versus inside sort of way. Thinks from the perspective of like in Rabid or in Shivers, thinks from the perspective of the disease, rather than from the perspective of human beings. But that's a mode that even if Cronenberg doesn't credit Lovecraft, well, certainly Burroughs was interested in Lovecraft and was influenced, and Burroughs then influences Cronenberg in so many ways. Also, like with the tentacles can be there or not. It doesn't necessarily matter. It's the ideas. Similarly, when we talk about, you can't film naked lunch, the first issue is the obscenity. But the obscenity is not the issue. And in fact, like, there are websites I can go to that are going to show me many of the obscenities that are acted out in some kind of form or fashion, just maybe without, fantastical mugwumps and stuff. Certainly add them. The obscenity is not actually the issue. I love the obscenity in Burroughs.
Hell yeah.
You better, or you're not going to stick with it. You're not going to finish the book. But the obscenity is not the issue. It's this, like, as you put it, a vibe. It's a sort of malevolent atmosphere of drugs. It's a malevolent atmosphere of kind of ambient evil that is what's at work in Naked Lunch, more than just, all the pornography.
Well, and I was going to say, like, Junkie even more so. Like, you have
Junkie, yeah.
I mean, as much as I love Naked Lunch, like, Junkie, I think, even leans further into, again, like, the transformative nature of these things and what does that mean, and how far does one go before, again, you become someone who's using a dildo named Steely Dan on yourself.
That's right. Most inappropriately named band of all time, I gotta say. For the kind of music, I really expected, based on Naked Lunch, when I first heard Steely Dan, I was like, okay, this is going to be some dark shit.
Not really. No.
A little bit loungy, I think.
No, I don't want to do your dirty work no more, okay?
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think we've mentioned pretty much everything. I mean, again, I think for the most part, you can see a lot of this in what we consider to be modern elevated horror. We mentioned Midsummer. I think Hereditary is kind of in this same world of, again, the forces of the world bearing down on you, and it's unknowable. And again, once you find out, it is beyond too fucking late. And I mean, in something like Hereditary, that's almost the perfect case of nobody is asking for it in that movie, and yet they
That's
get it anyways. And in that movie, you almost feel like you are the force of the movie. You're watching. You may not be involving yourself directly, but it feels like the narrative is involving itself with the lives of the characters, which is, again, that kind of removes where is the engine. The engine is something unknowable that nobody understands. We're assume that there's a demon and we're making a deal with him and that must be what's going on. Or are they all fucking crazy? Well, if they've all bought into it, does it really matter? No, it doesn't. And again, that goes back to Lovecraft's ideas. So yeah, these things pop up a lot now. More, I think, like you said, Spencer, as more of a framework at this point, less like Cthulhu is in our movie. I mean, as much as I love Underwater, which we can't mention here for various reasons, like I kind of wish they had never said it's not Cthulhu, because then we could mention it. But it is Cthulhu. Thank you. Okay, fine. Like, okay.
All right. Let me throw out one more. I'm going to veer way off the reservation out of horror, and this is the framework idea. Love streams. John Cassavetes' Love Streams, deeply Lovecraftian film. And I don't think that Cassavetes knew Lovecraft at all. That's not what he was up to. But I think he was aware of, the vibe, the thing that's out there. Love itself becomes the kind of Cthulhu of love streams. This thing that the characters cannot quite fully grapple with. Invades their dreams, that we get this like bizarre kind of inner and outer life, makes things questionable about the nature of animals versus human beings. There's a lot of animal stuff going on, whether it's like bringing in all the animals into the house with the little ponies, the miniature ponies going into the Cassavetes house and pooping everywhere. Whether it's that or the dog that turns into a human being near the end, or just all the scenes with that dog with his gigantic fucking pendulous balls, as the center of the shot over and over again. But Jenna Rowland's character talks about love as a stream and how it never ends and all this kind of stuff. And it is tapping into the idea that that love is absolutely essential in people's lives, but also a harmful and kind of malevolent force at the same time. Back to Laura Palmer again, and it does have a kind of happy-ish ending, at least on its own terms, as these characters in a storm with weird synth music and the dog turning into a man all seem to. Sorry for that spoiler if you've never seen Love Streams, but I tell you,
I want to watch it now, though, man. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, you can know about it. You're not prepared. I can't. It's one of those moments I cannot spoil for you because it's so deeply weird. And I mentioned Cassavetes. Well, so the ending is like the characters have come to terms with a thing. They haven't conquered it. They can't. No, who can conquer love? Love is this gigantic force that you can't conquer. But in terms of their relationship as brother and sister, played by a married couple in the film, but in terms of their relationship as brother and sister, they kind of come to an understanding, and it's an understanding that results from dreams, an understanding that results from failure, from hallucinations. The narration of the movie is not totally reliable, and I throw out Cassavetes as well, just because I think we mistake Cassavetes for a realist filmmaker. That Handheld does a whole lot. I mean, I love the Handheld, but in a lot of people's minds, the Handheld and the not improvised, but I'll say improvisational interpretation of the dialogue has in people's minds, this is realism, when actually most of those films are surrealism, they're expressionism. And in the case of Love Streams, I'm going to throw down, it's full-on crazy Lovecraftian. Who needs Cthulhu when you have love itself as an ambient force in the world?
Or Woman Under the Influence, which I just recently...
Absolutely.
Under
the influence of what?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it's funny you mentioned the idea of love, because I you mentioned the idea of it's so encompassing of everything and hard to really grab onto. I think there's room for that in the world of Lovecraft, and we haven't seen enough of that, which is approaching it in a again, we're using the framework of the ideas to have the conversation, but there doesn't need to be an actual monster. Like, there doesn't need to be the monster. The actual monster is unimportant, which, I mean, again, you know, the last thing I will mention, because Ryan has taken down so many things at this point, is, and again, this might be a little too on the nose, but again, it's Chambers, not Lovecraft, is the first season of True Detective.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I mean, they mentioned the Yellow King, they mentioned Carcosa, which both show up in Chambers, but they do the thing where they walk up to the line, toe the line a little bit, and then back the fuck out and say, nah, it was just a detective story all along. And again, like, I think that works. I think that it is still like my favorite 8 hours of television in terms of what it's going for. But I think the things that it's getting at in that are the unknowable, all-encompassing idea of what, in that narrative sense, is evil is all-encompassing. Evil is everywhere. Evil is behind every door. But we don't really know who or what, but we know it's there. True Detective traffics in that. Again, it doesn't go full Lovecraft or Chambers at the end, thankfully, but I think that deserves to at least just be mentioned in passing as we continue on down the Lovecraftian road. To Lovecraft country, as it were. Ba-doom.
To Lovecraft. Yeah.
Of course you did.
Yeah, I had to.
Are there any other questions left?
There's one more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we went a long way in that last
Well, the third question can tend to be the longest answered question because it, again, the conversation starts very narrow, but the third question just opens the gates up. So to bring it back down for the fourth question, Spencer, if someone is a fan of X, they would also be a fan of Lovecraft without Lovecraft. Solve for X. What is the X in our equation?
This is a strange question. Okay, I'm going to go off the reservation again. I'm going to keep going down this Love Streams path. I don't think they're fully Lovecraftian, but screwball comedies actually, love is a force of chaos. That's what makes them really, really screwball. And in particular, Bringing Up Baby is so chaotic and anarchic in the way that the love relationship works out, how much it kind of actually, Cary Grant goes mad and is ruined at the end of the film as his brontosaurus is all destroyed. But love wins at the same time. Bringing Up Baby is there. And then back to Cronenberg, I would love to have a double feature of Bringing Up Baby and The Fly, because they're really very much the same movie. And The Fly is basically a screwball comedy that goes totally awry into tragedy, which is always the possibility in a comedy.
Right.
Comedies should have the possibility that everything could veer way off base into tragedy. And The Fly has a kind of, descent into destruction and madness, but it is actually set off. Seth Brundle gets the idea that makes everything work by, Veronica telling him that, old ladies like baby's skin, and that he has to get serious about the flesh, that the flesh is complicated and weird and can't just be put together by numbers. And so this notion, after they have sex, as they're falling in love, this notion of the flesh becomes essential to making the machine work, which of course also destroys Seth Brundle, turning him into Brundlefly, and ending with one of the most profound tragic images that never doesn't make me cry, where Veronica has to shoot Seth Brundlefly in the head, and it explodes everywhere, and fade to black, end of the movie. No denouement, no coming off of that. And that again is like, that is it is at once done with love. She's killing him out of love. He lifts the he lifts the shotgun up onto his own head. So this is euthanasia. This is a thing that they've gone through. She is killing him out of love. there is no fantasy of mastery here. You cannot master the love and what it has created. And so similarly, bringing up Baby. Did I answer this correctly? If you like bringing up Baby, you should check out The Fly. Which is Lovecraftian as all fuck.
I would say you answered it in a way that you answered a specific thing, and there are plenty of people who are fans of a specific thing. My answer is a specific thing. I think if you are a fan of Martin Scorsese's often underwatched, but I think more recently is being reappraised and re-released and redone in 4K, I'm sure, After Hours. Not Martin. Oh, yeah, directed by Martin Scorsese, sure, but After Hours, which is like, again, pretty Lovecraftian, I think, in terms of like what it's doing. Maybe, again, it's not immensely obvious immediately that New York City is the Lovecraftian monster that he is contending with, or just the vibe of New York City as a whole.
Or women in that movie, to be fair.
Or just everybody, really. I mean,
everybody, but in particular, the women in that movie. And I like that movie, but let's be real.
Yeah, the way that they're painted is, again, it's so... Yeah, it's just so kind of, again, like, it's so specific that you have to wonder why it's being done this way, if not just to be provocative. But again, I would go as far as to say the idea of After Hours being this, like, again, the city feels so stifling. It's a character of its own. It feels like it's pressing down on him throughout the movie. Griffin Dunn is underneath New York City trying to get out from underneath it, and he cannot. That strikes me as very Lovecraftian. And he never understands really why it's going on, which I think for me, the cyclical nature of it just being, Mobius strip just being dropped off right at the front of his office. He walks in, and who knows if again, he acts like he's never done this before, but who knows if 7 days later it's going to be the same fucking thing, or 24 hours later it might be the same thing. He acts like it's not, but again, just because the movie doesn't hang a lantern on it doesn't mean that city isn't just a cosmic horror unto itself. So, no, I don't think you answered incorrectly, because I answered the same way. So,
excellent.
What about you, Ryan?
My thought on this was very benign compared to those two. I just went with, if you grew up on anthology horror like a lot of us did, anything from the modern series Creepshow to Twilight Zone to The Outer Limits, all this stuff, you have been subjected to some aspects of Lovecraft without Lovecraft. And if you look back on those fondly, you will find a sense of odd hope in the hopeless of Lovecraft without Lovecraft.
I'd say so.
So, anything else we want to talk about? Is there anything else, Spencer, you want to bring up before we bring this Lovecraftian train into the station?
Let me just name some more movies just to throw them out to people. I'm not going to talk about them for long. If you haven't seen Messiah of Evil, you got to see Messiah of Evil. This is consciously influenced by Lovecraft, but oh boy, what an incredible, it's an incredible experience. But if you are at all a fan of Lovecraft and you want to see something that is a fully Lovecraftian movie that's not consciously based on it, you got to see Messiah of Evil. What else do I have? I had a few others, I thought. Clive Barker, we haven't mentioned. Clive Barker, all Clive Barker movies are Lovecraft without Lovecraft. All of them. The good ones, the bad ones, whatever. Hellraiser, is there a more Lovecraftian movie than Hellraiser? No, there isn't. Is there, except maybe Candyman. Candyman, both the 1994 and 2021 Candymans, super Lovecraftian, and working very much on sort of notions of identity. One of the things that's great about the original Candyman, spoiler alert, but it's been out there long enough. Hold your ears if you haven't seen Candyman. Our intrepid grad student who travels into a place where she should not go. She is from outside, and she is the protagonist, but she turns out just like a Lovecraftian Lovecraftian character who finds themselves to be the monster. She is the ultimate monster. She is the one that unleashes Candyman by studying him. She is the one that becomes, Helen at the end, is the new monster. And similarly, in the new Candyman movie, the act of making art is monstrous, and this is very much a Lovecraftian kind of idea. And the act of making the art about Candyman turns character into a new manifestation of Candyman within a very strange sort of multiplication of Candyman, by the end of the film. But really, any Clive Barker, we have to mention him. And I think that's it. I'll settle there. I won't just keep rattling off titles.
Ryan, do you want to bring up Event Horizon for a moment? I know you said
Event Horizon, of course.
You said Hellraiser. I was like,
the best Hellraiser movie that's not called Hellraiser.
God, I don't think it's better than the original Hellraiser, but I think it's pretty close. I mean,
no, it's the best Hellraiser that's not called Hellraiser.
Yeah.
So I had 5 titles listed, and that was one of them that I wanted to bring up. One of them, we barely touched on it, but if you've somehow never seen Possession,
yes,
masterpiece. Everybody needs to discuss
good
Possession.
Starter movie for people to watch, I might say, too. Like, if you've never seen a horror movie, check out Possession. You can't go wrong.
Oh, man. I showed Possession to my students this quarter, and they weathered it okay, but that was a loud and intense and rough screening. They were shell-shocked by the end.
Shit, that sounds like more fun than I had in college in one evening. Your students had more fun in one evening than I did in 5 years in college.
See, that's why I like teaching college, because I get to do it better than was done for me.
Oh, yeah.
I had a lot of fun. I didn't have as much Possession fun, though. So...
my next one that I was going to bring up is 2016's The Void. Have either of you seen this? I think Chris has.
Yeah.
I have, yeah. I don't like that one, but that's Lovecraftian.
I like the ending. I feel like getting there is a little bit clunky, but I think compared to modern horror, it sticks the ending much better than like a lot of mainstream horror, and this went way under the radar. I mean, this was a Kickstarted movie. This was a crowdfunded film. That's pretty great for them.
Definitely worth seeing.
Another one that I feel like nobody has seen, and I really hope at least one of you two have seen this, 2015's Turkish film, Baskin. Have either of you seen this?
Baskin, I haven't. It is high on my list. I got to see Baskin.
Baskin is amazing. It is a One Crazy Night type of story about a group of cops that basically fall into hell and have to come to terms with that. And it is a crazy combination of some of the wildest movies you can think about. It's like Dante's Inferno and Hellraiser and some other just random like Turkish culture mixed within. And the weird areas that they take you to by the end of the movie, you get done and you have no clue what just happened. And it's just the most interesting movie to watch with zero context. Please go see Baskin. It is amazing.
Baskin's a good one.
Well, it's so good. Yeah. The last one that I have is a movie that very few people had seen until recently when it was released on a 4K beautiful package from Severin Films called The Spider Labyrinth. This is from 1988.
Oh, I got to see this. Yeah. I haven't yet.
Directed by Gianfranco Gianni, and it is like the definition of the weird genre that we brought up earlier. And this movie, it reeks of Lovecraftian things. It's wet, it's goopy, it's got these weird things like our main character's in a bustling city, and he's trying to find another place that he goes in his car to go find, and there's nobody on the streets, and every time he comes around the corner, the road is blocked off in a way that there's no driving around it, there's no escape. And so the actual labyrinth turns out to be this city that he is in, trying to escape from. And
oh, wow.
It is this amazing film that I got a chance to work on the disc. It is it's a masterpiece. I love this movie.
I got to see it. I will. So I'm going to make a confession, partly to narrow things down. I did not address much foreign stuff. So let me just throw out, now I have to, I'm chomping at the bit. Basically any Kiyoshi Kurosawa movie, deeply Lovecraftian, but most especially Cure, and going back to that kind of Fire Walk with Me idea of, sort of ambient, ambient evil. That definitely is, high on the list. And now, Oh man, why am I forgetting the title? It's a huge favorite of mine. The the best and nastiest Korean serial killer movie ever.
Wailing?
I Saw the Devil?
I Saw the Devil. I Saw the Devil is the goddamn greatest.
That's a good movie.
Super duper Lovecraftian. Not out there officially in a good format, but I found a decent YouTube of this, Love Massacre. Holy shit, what a good movie. That's a Hong Kong feature. And it is that one's remarkable. It is that one is a special kind of movie where its bite is much worse than its bark. You go for a long time and you think you're safe, and kind of, like, I think it's gnarlier than Audition in its own weird way, and like kind of keeping you wrong-footed and then going in a very, very hard horror direction.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I'll throw out those. Those are big for me right now.
Kind of surprised, Ryan, when you were mentioning Severin. I was expecting you to mention Eyes of Fire, which I think like green horror and like environmental horror is kind of like part and parcel with this. I mean, we kind of alluded already to Annihilation. Like environmental horror feels Lovecraftian. I mean, look, Cthulhu is it's an animal, really. Like, I mean, he's a giant octopus creature, elder god, but he's an animal by all. And so again, like the environmental, the green of it all, I think Eyes of Fire has, in terms of it being like a vibe and you're not sure what's going on, but the kind of encroaching evil that starts to envelop our characters. I watched that, I think this year or last year, and was very taken by it, in terms of, again, the evil that exists that is hard to pin down, that feels like it's just everywhere. I mean, we talked about The Lighthouse. The Witch is kind of the same thing. It's like it's out there, and once we figure out what's actually going on, it's too late for everybody. Like, and I mean, as you kind of alluded to, the characters in these movies don't tend to always have the best time, but that's okay.
No, it's all right.
All right. Pulling it in for a landing. Spencer, where can people look you up if they want to hear more from you or check out anything you've worked on?
Well, I got movies that are out there available. My movie I'll Come Running and my movie Saturday Morning. It's listed as Saturday Morning Mystery, but the real title to me is always going to be Saturday Morning Massacre. But those movies are out there to find wherever. And then I guess anyone who's been impressed by this and then they don't like those movies, they'll be like, no, I think that guy's stupid. So, go check out that stuff. I'm watching Twitter/X Burn. You can find me on there. I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to stick around. I didn't think it was going to last as long as it has. I was like, I want to see the ship to go down. And now I'm kind of like, I don't know that this is as interesting as I thought it was. But you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram, but I fucking hate Instagram now because it's all ads for how I can poop better. That's what the algorithm has decided I want. And video games where little worms get pulled out of people's feet. I guess, like, because I'm into horror and body horror, that I'm supposed to like video games about tweezing out worms from holes in people's feet. I don't know. Maybe those are great games. Maybe those games are fantastic. But Instagram. I just want to see pictures of people's dogs and their kids and like fun places where they went and like But I don't get that anymore. I get like poop ads.
You and I are friends on Facebook. I see you posting about that from time to time. That shit's funny as hell. What about you, Ryan?
I will throw out, I put out a physical media focused magazine called the Physical Media Advocate. You can get that on Amazon and a handful of retail locations if you are interested in where. Check out all of my social media under the Disconnected. I post about that frequently. And Chris.
Weirding Way Media. That's where you can go to find this show, all the other shows. Spencer, you and I have done several culture casts together. We did a Scary Stories We Tell together as well. So those are the places you can find the things that I've recorded with Spencer or just on my own. The Projection Booth, which has you on God knows how many episodes with Mike White talking about movies. But yeah, all that and more can be found at Weirding Way Media. As for this show, like, rate, and review the show wherever you get it. But if you would help us out, go to iTunes and rate and review it there. Most places you get your podcast don't allow you to rate or review things. If you're listening to this on iTunes, like, subscribe, hit that bell, all the things to engage with that so we can be helped by the algorithm there would be helpful as well. Spencer, thank you so much for... go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to throw out one more thing. I feel bad.
Yes.
So I have a couple pieces and more to come on Split Tooth Media. And in particular, apropos of this conversation, I have a pretty epic long piece about the franchise surrealism of the Friday the 13th movies and about how they are better as an unwieldy, insane franchise than as individual chapters, though I love the individual chapters quite a bit. So that's there. And I got an interview with John McNaughton about Wild Things that went up not long ago. Pretty fun interview with John. And I'm going to have more interviews with him coming up soon about some deeper cuts from his filmography. So go to Split Tooth Media. You can find some of my writing there, and I hope you enjoy it. And Wild Things is fucking great. So if you haven't seen it, you should watch it and then read the interview that I did with John.
Agreed.
You want to take us out, Ryan?
Sure.
Do you want me to do it? Or I mean,
we're out. It's over.
Bye. Good night now.
This conversation is over.
We hope you've enjoyed this. Check out the next episode of Film Foundations, and until then, watch something weird. If anything, tonight should have inspired you to put on something that makes you say, "What the actual fuck?"
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.